Hello and welcome to a video series on front-end architecture for RedSky. What we're going to do is we're going to actually create a number of smaller videos so that they're easier to digest, and also so we don't get into a very long, hour-long video and stuff. That way you can also go back to the actual videos that is kind of interesting, or maybe you need a refresher on how the RedSky framework works or whatnot. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a RedSky Quick Start. Now this is a Git project that we have hosted, and it is the project that we'll start with when we clone and want to start maybe a new project. It's just kind of the bare bones essential that just gets us up and going, gets our React app going, has a couple examples of how to do stuff, and oftentimes, like I said, we'll just clone this, rename it, rename the files and the package JSON and such to the new project that we're working on. So with RedSky Quick Start, I've already cloned it. I'm on the master branch here, and what we're going to do is we're going to just first start the project. So we have Yarn right now as our package manager, so we'll say Yarn start, and what it's going to do is it's going to launch a new window terminal to post or localhost 3000. Once that's up, you'll see this is our kind of almost like a sign-in admin interface. So it's a simple RedSky sign-in. It might be different by the time you're actually watching this video, just depending on how we change some of the styling and such. But here you go. Right now, you can type in any valid regex email address and type in any password that you want there and hit start or sign in. And you can kind of see, again, it looks a lot like an admin site with a nav menu on the left. You've got kind of a notification bar and your user info up there on the top right, and just a couple buttons and not much else there. So let's go ahead and actually explore some of the code. Here, let me collapse up all of the menus. Right now I'm using PHP Storm as my IDE of choice. And what you can see here is we have our build folder. So that's if you were to do a React build to actually get it bundled into the final output that you would host on a web server, that's your build folder. We have the node modules in most Node or React sites. We have the public folder, and inside the public folder we have our favicon. Right now it's just like the RedSky logo, but in a very low resolution 16 by 16. We have the index.html. The main point here is all React applications have their root div that is specified right there. The title of the site, that's something that you'd want to change if you were cloning this and changing it to your right one. The manifest JSON is used when you are using progressive web apps, so it allows you to kind of see the name that'll be stored on maybe the screen of the mobile device if they were to download this as an app and such. And then the robots text file is used for Google engine crawlers and stuff to say what they can and can't crawl. Next we have a scripts folder. In here we have an Android resource. So what we did is when we built this quick start guide, we wanted to be able to use it not only for web apps, but for native hybrid applications. So basically what we do is we will build this as a web page onto a mobile phone into an application framework like Ionic. And so Ionic is going to show a web browser, but to a user it's going to feel like they're actually interacting with a native application. And so this script right here will go and build some of the icons that are required for Android. We also have the same thing with iOS, so build out the iOS icons there and some of their assets that are needed, splash screen, for example. We also have a global interface file fetcher. So when we start up our application in a debug environment or when we're going to build it, a lot of times we need some information from our backend, our interface file that we use for sending off API requests, and other files that we might need to kind of synchronize the two projects. So this is a shell script that will go out, download using curl command those files that you might need. All right, so that's it for the script. The last one is the bit.dev, but I don't want to go into that because we're actively looking at moving away from bit.dev as a host for our framework. Next is our source folder. So we have an @types folder. This will have those files that get downloaded on that global file interface fetcher, but an example of them is this fake one that we have in here. And so it'll define our API interface for our users, and we have our requests and our responses that go out. So if we were going to go request maybe a login, we would send off login with username, password, and our response, typically, if I close up the request, our response might be a get of the user. So we might get the email, the name, a token, and whatnot, the ID of the user. And again, there's other files in there. I'm not going to go through everything. I'm just going to kind of go at a high level and maybe pick one or two files out. Next, we have our common components. So in React, we're kind of bundling everything into reusable components. And so we have an app bar, a menu, a user badge, and sometimes these components might be nested. So for example, our entire menu system has a menu component that we can see here, but it might have a menu group component, a menu item component underneath it, a menu text item component, and so forth. So we have that there. Custom hooks, so we are using React's functional components, and with that we have our effects that we can actually apply to that. So we've created some of our own custom hooks, such as figure out whether you're logged in or not on refresh of the page, seeing if they changed the orientation, so if they rotated the phone right or left, and also like maybe a window resize. So we will continue to build out our custom hooks and also add them to our libraries. Fonts, so these are the fonts that might be used in the web application. Railway and Roboto are common ones that we might use. Icons, this is an entire icon folder here that has a lot of our icons as a font. So the nice thing about having our icons as a font is you can scale them with a font size, you can apply different colors to them, so they're not just standard SVG, they're actually made into a font. If you want to see kind of what the icons are, a common thing I'll do is go into the demo HTML and click on one of these browsers. For example, I'll click on Edge, and you can see the font, you can see the name of it. So if you're going to go use that icon in there, you'd want to copy that name, icon store, and place that into your icon component and such. So going back to PHP Storm, that's the icons. Images might be images that you are baking into the site. A lot of times we'll want to mostly host these on a CDN network, but if you really need to have them kind of baked or built into the site, you can place them in here. So we have, maybe the logo or something. Next, we have our pages. So this will divide up each page on our site corresponds to a certain URL in the title bar, in the URL bar. And so we have, notice our dashboard page, loading page, login page, not found page. Those are the pages in there, and they typically have the same name with page underneath it. So dashboard page, TSX, and the SCSS file associated with it. Moving on, we have our pop-ups folder. So we might have all of our pop-ups would be nested underneath here. Services is a way for us to have our common logic that might be the same across all of our pages that we want to maintain in kind of a layer here. So our service layer will have our base class, so we're using object-oriented programming with our services. So we have a base class of service with maybe some methods in there. And we have our service factory, so we're using the factory pattern here, and that you'd learn about in design principles with object-oriented programming. And this allows us to define which services we have in here and create them on startup rather than later on. And then each service is nested underneath its own subfolder just to make the site a little bit cleaner in case there's files that go with them. Next, we have our state. So we use a global state manager that we're going to get to in a future video. Finally, we have our theme. So this allows us to style our framework's buttons, labels, other theme type parameters. So our primary colors and all that kind of stuff. Again, we'll get into this a little bit more, but this is basically where you do your styling on top of the framework that we have. Utils would be kind of common utils that don't necessarily make sense to be sectioned off into a service. So things like your HTTP requests that are going out, the router that's using our framework, some standard utils and such there. Then finally we have our app and our app TSX and our SCSS file. So this is the main component that gets rendered here. Our index file, which is common to every React application. And that pretty much covers the source folder. Outside we use Prettier to make sure our code is formatted to a consistent format, our git ignore. We have a number of shell scripts for actually building Android and running it and building releases, building an iOS release. Again, like I said, we use Ionic Capacitor for doing those applications. But if you're just actually doing a web application, these are not really needed. You can leave them or you can delete them and such. It doesn't really matter. Our TypeScript config is here. This is what we use when we actually build our TypeScript files. And then our bundler configuration, our Webpack is what we're using currently for our bundler. We're looking at possibly going to other ones such as maybe Snowpack or Vite would be possibly in the future. So these may or may not be relevant. So we've got a development version when you're wanting to launch the development, and you've got a production version if you're going to actually build. So that pretty much covers the entire framework for the Red Sky Quick Starts. Again, we're going to continue on these videos and progressively add on to each one. So hopefully this was helpful. Thank you.